You're listening to the Cyberwire Network, powered by N2K.
And now, a word from our sponsor, NordPass. NordPass is an advanced password manager from the team behind NordVPN, designed to help keep your business safe from data leaks and cyber threats. It gives your IT professionals control over who has access to your company's data and makes it easy for everyone else on your team to use strong passwords. Right now, you can go to www.nordpass.com/cyberwire for 35% off the NordPass Business Yearly Plan. Don't miss out on that. CISA spins up an election operations war room. Microsoft neglected to restrict access to gender-detecting AI. Yahoo uncovers vulnerabilities in OpenText NetIQ iManager. QNAP issues urgent patches for its NAS devices. Sysdig uncovers Emerald Whale. A malvertising campaign exploits Meta's ad platform to spread the CISA infostealer. Senator Wyden wants to tighten rules aimed at preventing U.S. technologies from reaching repressive regimes. Researchers use AI to uncover an IoT zero-day. Sophos reveals a 5-year battle with firewall hackers. Our guest is Frederico Hakamine, technology evangelist from Axonius, talking about how threats both overlap and differ across individuals and critical infrastructure. And you know what day it is. Be afraid of spooky data. It's Thursday, October 31st, 2024. I'm Dave Bittner, and this is your spooky Cyberwire Intel Briefing. Happy Halloween, everyone, and thank you for joining us here today. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, led by Jen Easterly, has launched an election operations war room to assist election officials and counter threats ahead of the 2024 U.S. presidential election. This temporary office aims to coordinate national support and deploy resources where needed as cyber and physical threats rise. Easterly noted that misinformation is a growing challenge, often spread by foreign adversaries to undermine public trust in the electoral process. Incidents have already been reported, including attempted foreign interference and attacks on campaign data. CISA, working with federal agencies and private sector partners, has intensified its security efforts to protect election infrastructure. Congress has raised concerns over a separate hacking incident linked to Chinese telecoms targeting U.S. communications infrastructure, which authorities are now investigating. Despite the tense security landscape, Easterly has been reassuring voters, stating that U.S. election security has been significantly strengthened to ensure the integrity of each vote. As federal agencies prepare to submit updated zero-trust implementation plans, CISA's Shelley Hartsook reports significant progress since OMB's 2022 zero-trust mandate. Speaking at the Cyber Talks event in Washington, D.C. yesterday, Hartsook noted improvements in multi-factor authentication implementation across agencies, with standard MFA use rising from 53% to 80% and phishing-resistant MFA increasing from 46% to 71%. CISA has strengthened its support, holding numerous training workshops and partnering with the Cloud Security Alliance for further training on micro-segmentation and zero trust for operational tech. In 2022, Microsoft pledged to phase out its AI tools for detecting age, emotion, and gender, citing ethical concerns and risks to marginalized groups, especially transgender individuals. However, recent findings reveal that Microsoft's gender detection tool remained accessible to some users. The artist Ada discovered she could still use the older version of Microsoft's image analysis API to classify age and gender, despite Microsoft's announcement to retire these capabilities. Microsoft attributed this oversight to an error allowing limited unintended access, which it says has now been corrected. Critics argue this reflects a broader trend in ethical AI where commitments to responsible practices are inconsistently enforced. Yahoo's vulnerability research team, which goes by the name Paranoid, uncovered 11 vulnerabilities in OpenText NetIQ iManager, a tool for secure enterprise directory management. These flaws, if exploited together, could allow remote code execution, file upload, and privilege escalation, among other risks. 4 vulnerabilities were detailed as particularly severe. Attackers could exploit these by tricking users into accessing malicious websites, potentially gaining administrator credentials and control over downstream directory services, which store sensitive user account data. Patches were released in April. QNAP has issued urgent patches for critical vulnerabilities in its network-attached storage devices, including a severe SQL injection flaw that allowed researchers at Pwn2Own Ireland 2024 to gain root access on a QNAP TS464 model. Another zero-day vulnerability in QNAP's HBS3 hybrid backup sync was also patched after enabling arbitrary command execution. Given QNAP's attractiveness for ransomware due to its sensitive data storage, users should immediately update their devices via the App Center to secure against these risks. The Sysdig threat research team recently uncovered Emerald Whale, a global campaign targeting exposed Git configuration files, resulting in the theft of over 15,000 cloud service credentials. Attackers exploited these misconfigurations to access and clone private repositories, extracting sensitive information and storing it in a publicly accessible S3 bucket. The stolen credentials, primarily from cloud service providers, are likely used for phishing, spam, and resale. Emerald Whale automated scanning to locate vulnerable repositories, focusing on git config and laravel.env files, which often contain sensitive data. Sysdig reminds users this incident highlights the need for vigilant exposure management and continuous monitoring, as secret management alone is insufficient for comprehensive security. A malvertising campaign is exploiting Meta's ad platform to spread the CISA infostealer, targeting men over 45 with fake ads for popular software. The malware steals Facebook credentials, especially from users managing business pages, and uses these compromised accounts to create new malicious ads, thus fueling a self-sustaining cycle. The attack disguises itself through a wide range of trusted brands, from Office 365 to Netflix, and relies on an Electron app to evade detection. Impacting users globally, the malware poses significant risks, especially in the EU and North America. In an exclusive for Cyberscoop, Tim Starks reports that Senator Ron Wyden has urged the U.S. Commerce Department to tighten proposed rules aimed at preventing U.S. technologies from reaching repressive regimes that could misuse them for surveillance and human rights abuses. The 2022 law behind these rules expanded controls to foreign police and intelligence, inspired by a UAE case where former U.S. operatives allegedly used cyber tools against targets, including Americans. Wyden argues the rules should cover more countries beyond the current list of 23 nations, specifically naming countries with poor human rights records like Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. He also advocates closing a loophole allowing foreign companies to bypass restrictions by not disclosing client lists, and recommends extending controls to all biometric technologies, not just facial recognition. This proposal aligns with the Biden administration's new restrictions on investments in sensitive tech that could strengthen China's military and cyber capabilities. Researchers at Grey Noise have used AI to uncover zero-day vulnerabilities in IoT-connected live streaming cameras deployed in critical sectors like healthcare, industry, and houses of worship. The discovery followed an automated exploit attempt detected by Grey Noise's Honeypot, where AI flagged the unusual activity. Analysis showed attackers could gain full control of the cameras, manipulate video feeds, disable operations, or use the devices in botnet attacks. This case highlights AI's potential in accelerating zero-day detection, allowing Grey Noise to intercept and report the vulnerabilities before widespread exploitation. Wired's Andy Greenberg chronicles a 5-year battle between Sophos and a group of hackers exploiting vulnerabilities in its firewall products, leading to a detailed report highlighting the cybersecurity industry's struggle with inherent risks in network security devices. Sophos tracked the attacks to a network of vulnerability researchers in Chengdu, China, linked to state-aligned groups like APT41. The hackers initially launched widespread attacks before transitioning to more targeted efforts against critical sectors, including military, government, and energy facilities in Asia and beyond. To counter the attackers, Sophos deployed surveillance implants on the hackers' test devices and preempted further attacks by intercepting malware samples. However, as hacking techniques evolved, Sophos observed the attackers exploiting outdated, unsupported devices. The report underlines the risk of unpatched end-of-life devices as entry points and calls for transparency and rigorous end-of-support policies within the industry, emphasizing the need for ongoing vigilance as the threat landscape continues to shift. Coming up after the break, my conversation with Frederico Hakamine from Axonius. We're talking about how threats both overlap and differ across individuals and critical infrastructure. Stay with us. Quick question. Do your end users always work on company-owned devices and IT-approved apps? If the answer is no, then my next question is, how do you keep company data safe on all those unmanaged apps and devices? 1Password has an answer to this question: Extended Access Management. 1Password Extended Access Management helps you secure every sign-in for every app on every device, because it solves the problem traditional IAM and MDM can't touch. Check it out at 1password.com/XAM. That's 1password.com/XAM. When it comes to ensuring your company has top-notch security practices, things can get complicated fast. Vanta automates compliance for SOC 2, ISO 27001, HIPAA, and more, saving you time and money. With Vanta, you can streamline security reviews by automating questionnaires and demonstrating your security posture with a customer-facing trust center. Over 7,000 global companies like Atlassian, Flow Health, and Quora use Vanta to manage risk and prove security in real time. Our listeners can claim a special offer of $1,000 off Vanta at vanta.com/cyber. That's VANTA.com/cyber for $1,000 off Vanta. Frederico Hakamine is technology evangelist at Axonius. I recently caught up with him to talk about how threats both overlap and differ across individuals and critical infrastructure.
Many sectors will have differences in two things. The first one is who they are and what they are subject for as part of that responsibility. And the second one is what they have. We're talking about infrastructure. We are talking about the people they work for and things of that nature. Great example of that, carrying over to a sector. If you are in critical infrastructure, let's say you are part of a very important healthcare company, or if you work on the energy industry, basic infrastructure, like I said, you cannot help but be a target of nation state attackers, because that can really affect people, affect politics, affect general infrastructure that people used to live and to have the basics. But if you work in e-commerce, or if your company is on the e-commerce space, chances are you're much more subject to scalpers or to DDoS attackers or to credit card fraud. So depending on the sector in who you are, you get that challenge. But depending on your technology, you also get different kinds of challenges. So let's say there are two companies in the same space. One company uses Kubernetes in infrastructure as a code like Terraform, and the other one doesn't. So what that changes for you as a company is that will greatly change the variety of assets and things you need to protect, the skills that you need to protect those things, and how those things keep changing every day. Infrastructure as a code, an hour ago you had 10,000 assets to protect, and then tomorrow, because there's a spike in your website, you have 100,000. So those are the main differences when it comes to individuals versus sectors versus things that are personal to you as a company. Make sense?
It does. So what are the practical implications then? I mean, is this primarily a matter of security pros having to evaluate this and then dial in what's appropriate for their individual situation?
There's a little bit of that, but there's a little bit of also skills in how much things you need to protect. So coming up to the first thing we talked about, like depending on the kind of attacker who's targeting you, you need to take different strategies. If there's a nation state attacker, chances are you're going to get a certain kind of attack pattern. Whereas if you're a company at a low key, low profile, you're going to have much more social attacks or much more generic attacks, not specific targeted to you. That's one. But to the infrastructure, what that does, it really changes the kind of skills that you gotta have in the kind of cognitive load that you need in order to secure something. So let's say if you are a company in the past and you have just servers and bare metal to protect, that would require you to have certain skills. But if you have multiple cloud vendors and virtual machines, and those virtual machines handle containers, that requires much more skills. That makes you as a cybersec pro have a lot more to carry on and take care of.
What about scalability? You know, as a company grows and their attack surface changes in size, how do you approach that?
Yeah, so as companies grow, both in technology and also in size, they have that change in threat surface. It's growing in number, it's growing in variety, and it's growing rate of change. We gave some examples over here. And to make matters worse, like there is a very strong cybersecurity pro shortage. Like companies can only fill 70% of the job openings here in the States. Just like unfilled security jobs in 2024, we're talking about 3.5 million people, or like enough to fill 50 NFL stadiums. So to address that, like security pros need to think about the root cause. When I think about that, is like kind of providing you tools to fight the asymmetric battle, much more than, and especially important. Of course, we need to invest in defense in depth, having a good device strategy, having a good identity strategy, having a good overall strategy to help you as an individual cover as many systems as possible with the time you already have, with the mental bandwidth you already have. So we're talking about automating assessment, having insights to remove the cognitive load, and automating remediation too.
How do you communicate this strategy to the various stakeholders in your organization here to help them understand how you're setting your priorities and using the various resources that you have?
Yeah, I like to think that it all comes back to the basics of security. When we communicate with stakeholders, think about it, right? Like security is always being a conversation about risk trade-off. There's no such a thing as zero risk. I mean, there is not doing anything. Like, hey, I won't start a business, so there's zero risk with that. But ever since you do it, you have a risk conversation to have with your stakeholders. And the language of risk and risk trade-offs is what makes it stick. It's what makes people understand. So my workforce have this amount of cybersecurity pros, and we have this amount of things to protect, whether those are people or technology. With our time, we can take care of this amount of things. And from now on, we need to start prioritizing, like what's higher risk, what's lower risk. Sounds extremely basic, I know. But having the mechanisms and the tooling and the processes that allow you to have these basic conversations in basic risk language is what allows you to carry intelligent conversations with your leaders, and even more so with the people you are mobilizing, right? A lot of the issues we find, they get fixed by IT, they get fixed by the SREs running our production systems. So level setting into the risk conversation, the risk trade-off really simplifies that conversation.
What are your recommendations for organizations who are at the early stages of this journey? They understand that this is something they want to focus on. This is a technique they want to adopt. What's the best way to get started?
I think the best way is to first ask yourself some basic questions and seeing your level of confidence on that. I'll say 3 questions out loud here that could help you see how you are in the journey. The first one is like, think about an asset that you have in your company. Maybe these are devices, these are identities, maybe these are SaaS applications. And ask yourself and your peers, like, how many of those we have? If you start getting different numbers and different answers, it means like there might be a gap. The second kind of question is like, hey, we got an urgent thing to solve in security and we got to mobilize IT. If there's like a very hard conversation around prioritization, or the last question is like how confident we are on the things we're securing. If you get like very confident on the things where, let's say, things that you control, the devices that belong to your company, but you don't have much on BYOD or other gaps, that can tell you like, hey, I need to do something about it. When it comes to doing something, I'm a strong believer that if you cannot measure, you cannot secure well, you cannot formulate the basis of a very strong risk conversation. So looking at solutions and alternatives that give you a good view of your cyber asset management can be a great baseline for discovery, insights, and automation. So think about those things like formulating a good baseline, answering those 3 questions with confidence that will greatly help you see the basics. And from there, it's like building a snowball. We see automation coming in many different places, shapes, and forms. And I highly recommend that you as a leader or as a cybersec pro start looking at like, how do I build my work in an automated way? Every day I wake up, I know what I need to protect. I know what is at a greater risk, not only based on external things, but based on my internal information. And especially the triage is already pre-automated for me.
That's Frederico Hakamine from Axonius. Imagine this. Your primary identity provider goes down, whether it's a cloud outage, network issue, or even a cyber attack. Suddenly, your business grinds to a halt. But what if it didn't have to? Meet Identity Continuity from Strata, the game-changing solution that keeps your business running smoothly no matter what. Whether your cloud IDP crashes or your on-prem system faces a hiccup, Identity Continuity seamlessly shifts authentication to a secondary or even tertiary IDP, automatically and without disruption. Powered by the Mavericks Identity Orchestration Platform, Identity Continuity uses smart health checks to monitor your IDP's availability and instantly activates failover strategies tailored to your needs. When the coast is clear, it's a seamless switch back. No more downtime, no lost revenue, no frustrated customers. Just continuous, secure access to your critical applications every single time. Protect your business from the high costs of IDP outages. With Identity Continuity from Strata, downtime is a thing of the past. Visit strata.io/cyberwire to learn how Strata's identity continuity can provide seamless enhanced capabilities to your existing identity fabric and receive a free set of AirPods Pro. And finally, in an article on LinkedIn, Simpson Garfinkel, chief scientist at Basis Tech, shares a Halloween-themed essay on spooky data that draws a parallel between quantum entanglement and data privacy. Just as entangled particles influence each other at a distance, spooky data connects seemingly separate data points, affecting one when the other changes. In cybersecurity, public and private keys act as an entangled pair, where deleting a private key enhances a server's security without changing the server itself. A relatable example of spooky data involves data de-identification. Suppose a teacher shares a seemingly anonymized class average. Knowing one student's grade can reveal all other students' scores, demonstrating how partial data disclosure can expose private information. This is a risk explained by the fundamental law of information recovery, highlighting that without differential privacy, releasing statistical information can compromise data privacy. Differential privacy adds randomization to mask exact values, though occasionally resulting in surprising figures, like a class average above 100, thus preserving privacy while keeping data largely accurate. So, just when you thought your data was safe, along comes spooky entanglement with a ghostly surprise. And that's the Cyberwire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. We'd love to know what you think of this podcast. It's your feedback that brings our insights to life and keeps them from haunting your inbox. If you like our show, please share a rating and review in your favorite podcast app. For an extra treat, fill out the survey in the show notes or send an email to cyberwire@n2k.com. It's no trick. We are honored that N2K Cyberwire is part of the daily routine for the most influential leaders and operators in the public and private sectors, from the Fortune 500 to some of the world's most spirited intelligence and law enforcement agencies. N2K makes it frightfully easy for companies to optimize their most valuable asset, their people. We'll make you sharper about your teams while making your teams eerily effective. Learn how at n2k.com. This episode was produced by Liz Stokes. Our mixer is Trey Hester, with original music and sound design by Elliot Peltzman. Our executive producer is Jennifer Eiben. Our executive editor is Brandon Karpf. Simone Petrella is our president. Peter Kilpie is our publisher. And I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Or will we?